Welcome to Flight Club. We take off soon. Make yourself comfortable. We recommend getting a drink and headphones. Yes, headphones are essential. The first rule about Flight Club is you do talk about Flight Club. The second rule about Flight Club is you do talk about Flight Club. This flight will never stop. Welcome to Flight Club. Welcome to Flight Club. This flight will never stop.
Flight Club. Flight Club. Flight Club. Flight Club.
Welcome to Flight Club. We take off soon. Make yourself comfortable. We recommend getting a drink and headphones. Yes, headphones are essential. The first rule about Flight Club is you do talk about Flight Club. The second rule about Flight Club is you do talk about Flight Club. This flight will never stop. This flight will never stop. Welcome to Flight Club. We take off soon. Welcome to Flight Club. This flight will never stop.
Hello everyone and welcome to Flight Club. My name is Klaus Leopold and I'm the co-host of this show. And today we have another fantastic guest. She's actually a flight levels coach, Natalia. But before we switch to Natalia, Cliff, my co-host, please say hi.
Hello and good evening, everyone. It's good to be back with you again this week. Very excited to be talking with Natalia Schwarz about her work at REWE Digital. So thanks to all of you who are joining us. I'm seeing many friendly faces, lots of you joining us from all over. We have Sweden, Croatia, we even have the US, and then another flag that I cannot quite make out on my screen, but super cool to have so many people joining us from all over. Yes, before we get too much into the detail of today's conversation, I just want to remind everybody, I know a lot of you are joining us perhaps for the first time, and for those of you who are interested, you can stay in the loop by joining us on our meetup group. I will show you the link in a second. And of course, as Klaus has put on the screen, if you hit the like and subscribe, you will also get YouTube notifications. It also helps us to kind of spread the word and talk on the internet about Flight Club and all the great events and so on that we are doing. Hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and also subscribe on the meetup link, which I will post shortly. Cool. So, very good to have you with us, Natalia. Super cool to be able to have a conversation about the work that you've been doing at REWE Digital. So I want to kind of kick off with a couple of questions. So maybe some people are on the stream who do not know so much about the company or the work that you're doing. The impression I've gotten is that this company has been growing quite fast. You had some big numbers that you were talking about and so on. Maybe you can give us just a little bit of context on the company as a whole, and what have you been doing? So what has the journey been over the last few years?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for being here. Hi together. My name is Natalia, and I'm working as a tribe master at the REWE Digital. The REWE Digital is or was a little startup from the REWE concern, and we are responsible for the whole e-commerce part. Maybe some guys from Germany also had or bought there some e-commerce things on the homepage, so you can buy there some food things. And the REWE Digital, they started I think 2014 as a startup, and they were a little small and they grew very, very fast. I think I started there 2016. We were like 200 employees, and right now we are over 800, so it's very, very big. And the cool thing at the REWE Digital is that we have not only the technology in our company, we have also the operational part, we have the marketing part, we have all part that's needed for the whole customer journey we have in our company together. And it's pretty cool because we work very close together. And I would say a little bit more about it in the next steps, because that was one of the points why we started our pilots and the OKRs.
Very cool. So my understanding is that there's obviously, there's this broader context of rapid change and so on, and that's kind of one thing that is maybe a little bit different about your organization to some of the other folks that may be on the call here. Of course, as I said in the description text, not every company is experiencing hypergrowth, but I do think that there are some interesting things that we can learn from companies that do this, and I, of course, refer to some of my experiences in the past as well. So I'm curious, if you think about this kind of super fast growth and so on, what have been some of the sort of interesting challenges that you've had to deal with, aside from kind of getting into the OKR stuff, but just generally, what is kind of the challenges that you've faced as a fast growing company?
Yeah, I think the biggest points that I realized were that when you grow so fast, you grow because you have your vision, you have your vision, and you start or you want to achieve that. And you forgot on this way that you have a culture, you have employees there, and you grow very fast. So it's not like in the beginning that everybody knows each other from seeing, and you know the names, and you can collaborate very directly and fast. The way of the communication, the collaboration, they're getting very they're getting longer, and they're getting slower. So that means that you have to work on the organization, you have to work on the collaboration there. And I think the culture and the collaboration that were the culture and the collaboration that were the biggest 2 points that we forgot to roll us together, because we got, I think when I started, we had every month like a big stand up, or every week, and every month the new employees were coming. And I think there were like 50 employees per month. That was very, very fast.
Yeah. This is kind of a crazy thing of like you've barely even got the first few people in the door, the last round of folks up to speed, and now there's new people. And I think it's interesting because I've worked at a number of companies where even without the rapid growth, this kind of pattern still happens. And I think one thing that I found, and I'm curious if this has been your experience, but as a result of people coming into the door so often, the onboarding process becomes quite a big focus around how do we get people up to speed. And it's funny because you sort of, I mean, my experience was it was a slightly different sort of a context perhaps, but like this thing of new people arriving the whole time, it really does put an emphasis on it. And I think so often, in contrast to sort of more traditional companies or longer lasting companies, I've seen the sort of rapid startups actually doing a much better job of onboarding people, not just in terms of the pace, but actually just in terms of the level of understanding, and kind of people really feel like they're part of something at the end of it. So I think it's interesting, despite moving super fast, somehow managing to put the emphasis on a few kind of key different things. Yeah,
Definitely.
Cool.
I think that's very good part of the startups, because startups, they have more focus on the employees, and that the employees are like feel good in the company since the beginning. And I think that's one of the good things that startups bring with this.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting space. So we've got a bunch more questions lined up, but what I want to do is just remind everybody on the live stream and on the chat, please fire off your questions in the chat. We'd love to be able to weave them into the conversation and see kind of where we end up. The idea is that this is as useful as possible for you. So the more questions you ask, the more interesting the conversation can be to you. So basically what we'll do is we'll chat about a couple of things, and as soon as the questions start rolling in, we'll try to switch over to much more of the questions from the chat. So just to kind of kick off, we talked a little bit, Natalia, about this kind of introduction of OKRs. And I guess at some level, being a flight levels coach, but also coming from a flight levels context, there is also some flight levels in there, and maybe there's sort of a mix of maybe some other tools, because my experience, one tool doesn't fit every single situation. But tell us a little bit about what was kind of the thinking behind using this particular set of tools. Why were you doing this, and what was the sort of underlying challenge or the questions that you were trying to sort of tackle? Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. I think I have to begin before the flight level coach, because we started with the OKRs before, and that was just a good addition for that. We started, I mentioned before that I started 2016 as a Scrum Master, and 2017 I changed in the Fulfillment Tribe as a Tribe Master. Tribe Master is something like one level above is responsible for the processes, for the collaboration in the tribe. In our tribe in Fulfillment, we had at this time 16 teams in Sofia and in Cologne and Bonn. And there we started to, we had also a change in our management. And our management, I think that's one of the sticking points also, that our management recognized we have a problem in our collaboration, because we grow so fast, and we have a problem in the collaboration between the technology and the operational part, for example. And we had also prejudices regarding the work mode, like agile and conservative, and therefore we started to make a little pilot in this bigger agile transformation that we started with that. And with this pilot, we made a little transformation group from our Fulfillment Tribe and also from the operational colleagues. And we stick together and was thinking about how we can collaborate in a better way. And one idea was then we need common goals. We need an alignment so that we can work together, because in our product development, we don't work without the operational part who give us the ideas, for example, from our storages. And therefore, we started with the first pilot. And during this pilot, then we started, okay, we have so many ideas. How can we manage that with our different teams in our tribe? And then we started with our flight level. But in this case, it was more on the focus flight level 2. That means the end-to-end. And it was pretty good because it was not only the end-to-end focus in our technology, not only product development. It was also before a step after to see what's going on before or. Okay, I hear different noise. Okay, steps before and after with the operational part together, and that's was pretty good, just for a better alignment and to keep all those prejudices regarding the working mode, because the working mode is not relevant in this case.
Okay. Cool. So when I understand this correctly, so you started with OKRs before you started with flight levels and stuff like this. So maybe let's go one step back, because there's actually a question in the chat. So maybe not everyone is totally familiar with OKRs. So Tomo is asking like, okay, where's actually the difference between like, or why is OKRs better than MBOs, like management by objectives? So yeah, what do you think about this?
Seriously, I don't know. Because
Okay.
it's, in my opinion, that's two models which are very close, and we started not only we don't start with the OKRs, because the OKRs is also just a thinking model from our side. We start like we need common goals, and we need to measure how if we achieve these goals, and therefore the first steps, the first pilot that we did in our tribe with the operational part together, that not really that weren't really OKRs. We started to define goals, and we started to define measures, KPIs, or anything like that, so that we can sit together every week, every month, and to see if we're on the right track or not. And that was the first step. And afterwards, step by step, we started to get more in this official definition of OKRs, and that was last year. There we started with trainings, for example, for the OKRs, and there we started also to get in a better definition of the OKRs. Therefore, so seriously, I don't know, or I can't say if there's really a positive or a negative reference to the OKRs or the MDOs. So from my experience, don't think about this model or the name of this model, think what you want to achieve. And for us, what's relevant, that we want to have common goals and we want an alignment. And then we started, and I looked at the first OKRs in our Excel sheet. That wasn't an Excel sheet. I looked at the first OKRs, and that weren't OKRs. It were just some goals and good discussion, basics, so that the guys could sit together once a month and discuss about that, and to go on the same.
And I mean, Cliff, I see you nodding and thumbs up and like this. So I know that you were also, you used to work, no, you're still working with OKRs actually, but you were working with OKRs actually for quite a long time. So what is your take on this? Can you echo somehow what Natalia says, emphasize it?
Yeah, so I can't talk too much to the specifics of MBOs by what Tomo is talking about or asking about. But one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do when they do the objectives is they tend to focus on the individual first. And this kind of matches a little bit to kind of what flight levels is a little bit in response to, saying that, you know, the goal here is not to try to keep the individual busy or the individual on target. We're trying to keep ultimately the company and before the company, the team or the department, the tribe, something like this. And so it's for me, and I kind of hear this in what Natalia is saying, and it resonates with my positive experiences, is that when the focus is around trying to get a group of people to have a good, healthy conversation about what direction they need to head in, and how they would know or get some signals if they were actually going in a good direction. That is very different to trying to set targets for 15 individuals and then somehow hoping that they ladder up to something kind of meaningful. So I think very often what people miss inside this is they focus on the smallest parts because that's somehow easier. But my experience is actually that it's not only easier, but also far more effective to start at the highest level possible. What actually is the OKR, the objective or the key result at the company level? And if you don't have that, then work on that before you start getting too much way down into the detail of what does Klaus or what does Natalia have to do. Like, let's get the high level right. We don't usually have so many questions about how can I contribute to that if I know what the goal actually is. So that's kind of been my general experience.
Maybe just
I'm wondering. Sure.
To the question from Tomo, maybe it's useful just to analyze what was the problem, because it was such a disaster for you, because it's maybe not only, maybe it was not the MDOs, because from my experience, the most models getting a disaster because we don't have the acceptance from the management, and we don't have the acceptance from our colleagues, and so maybe that was a point that it was also a point with the MBOs. I think just to make an analyze to see what was the problem.
I see the same thing. People say they're using the Spotify model and it works or it doesn't work. They've done this with Scrum, Kanban, flight levels, whatever, and it works or doesn't work. But then you look at what they're actually doing, and it's been interpreted a little bit. We have a slightly different view of what's going on as well. So, interesting. I'm curious, there was a question here. Sven Surrey is asking, how far into the future do you look with your OKRs? I think this is sort of an interesting thing. How far are you trying to kind of think ahead in this context?
The OKRs in our company, or that what we started, was that we, I think the most companies that also, we have something like the middle or the midterm planning, MIFRI in Germany, midterm planning. So that means we have to plan for the next years, and very dedicated for the next 1.5 years, 1 year. That means our OKRs that we started in our flight level 2 with the end-to-end coordination, we started to make it once in a year. Since the summer, it was also always for the next year totally. Just very, very rough to see just in a direction where we want to go. And then we started to do the defined OKRs for us once in a quarter. And we started then with the OKRs in a quarter to define it, to set an alignment, then to go every second week in a sync to see how far we are with the OKRs and the key results. And then to do at the end of the 3 months, we made a retrospective and a review, and to adapt it. And then we go farther to the next quarter, and all the time we had a look on that, what we defined for the whole year. And it could be also that we say, okay, we can't stick by that, we have to adapt it, we have to change it. Why? And then we have to argument it. And a good point, what I like very much, is we as a tribe leadership, because the tribe master is a part of bigger tribe leadership. We as a tribe leadership, we had the responsibility to show our management once in a month how far we are with our product development, and what the next steps, for example. And it was always a little bit difficult because you can't really measure it, because we always work with EBITs, so with the money. And so it was pretty easier for us to take the OKRs and show that with the OKRs in the progress. I can show you later a picture of how we did it, because it was also a good point to show the management that not everything is measured in EBIT, for example. Maybe also efficiency. And that was a good basic for us to use that and to communicate with the management, so that the management also can understand why, for example, the development is not so fast or not so far like they wanted it. It was easier for us to argument it.
Okay. So I want to step back slightly and talk a little bit about something that we discussed during our preparation, and it kind of comes through in the title of this session. So we talked about sort of the pilot approach, and one of the things that I found most fascinating about what you were doing was this idea of, at least how I heard it, and I want to hear your own words on this. So that's where the question is going. But how basically you introduced this as kind of it's an idea, let's test it, let's see what people think, let's iterate on it, let's adapt, let's learn again. Because I think often what people see is they talk about, whether it's what you've done here, or they look at Google's OKRs, they look at the Spotify model, and they see one single instance in time, but maybe miss some of the fact that the journey is not quite a straight line or a single description. That's how it might be right now. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about, how did that journey look, and what was your experience of kind of this adaptive, iterative approach of introducing this way of thinking? And you can tell us both the good and the bad if you're willing to share both sides of that. Yeah.
Okay. I will try it, because we had there 3 different pilots that we started with the OKRs. The first pilot I already mentioned, with this agile transformation that we did, that was more on the culture factor to get a better collaboration between the technology and operations part, for example. And after a while, or in this first pilot, not the whole tribe of the fulfillment made this OKR experience. They just, I think 2 or 3 teams, just a squad, started with their operational stakeholders to make this OKRs and to sit together once in a month and discuss it. And after a while, seriously, I don't know why. I think just because I worked very closely with the CPO and the delivery manager. And after a while, we decided that we need also OKRs for our whole tribe. Because at this moment, we had a little bit problems to get the goals from our company. We don't really have goals at this situation or at this time. And we started to create goals for our company. And for us, it was very, very important, even regarding this end-to-end process, that we could align our goals with the operational department, with the management of them. And therefore, we started to create OKRs for the whole tribe. And that was our first step. So we defined just for the whole tribe, the OKRs were very rough and not really as OKRs defined, but it was necessary. It was okay for us, and we used that as we had our strategy, what we had, and then we had our objectives, and we had our key results and the sub goals that we used for that. So it was very important for us not only to have this strategy and the objectives, so come in the work and to use the sub goals and to match them to the different key results. And that was the next step. So we started then to do that with the whole tribe. And afterwards, I think it was last year, there was a group or some guys then started to say, okay, we also use OKRs, but in other departments. For example, the marketing department, they also used OKRs, but they used it in another way. That's totally okay, because the OKRs is just, for my opinion, it's just a thinking model. And but it was very necessary or very interesting for us to see how do you use that, and how can we use that for our collaboration to do that better, for example, or to learn from each other. And then we sat together and made a new OKR pilot group for the whole company. And then with the management, we started to say, okay, look, we have here different OKRs, and every department is doing their own tribe or department OKRs, because we don't really know our strategy, for example, or the company OKRs. And a few months before, or 1 year before, we started, or the company made a new company purpose. That was very interesting for us. And based on this purpose, we started then also to go in this discussion with the company OKRs and said, okay, let's start with a pilot on the company level. That means we wanted to go a step further, not only to be on the flight level 2 with the end-to-end coordination, to go a step further on the strategic level also to do company OKRs on this level. And that was a pilot that we started last year, and it was very interesting because different departments came together and we could see what were the different models that they use from the OKRs, and we started to create for us all in this pilot group a framework conditions that for the OKRs that's possible to use for all of them, like the framework conditions that everybody from the other departments who want to use then the OKRs, they could copy it and then to go on the deep dive to make it more visible to their own teams, departments, whatever. And that was pretty cool that we started there. And there was also a sticking point to get convinced management. And I think that's always the point, not only to get the convenience from the management, also from the other colleagues.
Yeah. I think it's great. I mean, you've given a bunch of examples of how it's kind of sort of evolved and kind of iterated over time. And I think that's the thing, is that so often we see this, and when you tell the story in retrospect, it's quite easy to say, oh, well, it was, we did this, we did that, and then magic and ponies came out the other side. But the reality is that it is a little bit sometimes, oh, well, we got lost in the woods for a little while and we took a detour over there and we did something, then we undid it and then we did it again. And I think this is really quite interesting. There's actually a cool question in the chat. Tim Nolan is asking, he says, you've often changed your OKRs, or have you often changed, or if I can rephrase it, how have you changed your OKRs as a result of experimentation and piloting? So maybe you could give some examples of, you were going in a direction, now you learned something and went a slightly different way.
How have we changed our OKRs as a result of experiment? I think the most learnings we had in our tribe, the fulfillment tribe, together with our operational part, because we were from all pilots or all departments which are working with the OKRs, we were the first one who made this bigger end-to-end coordination. That means not only our department, also the department from our operational part together. And that's more work because you have to coordinate much more. And I think there we had the most learnings in this area, and therefore we started then with a defined OKR cycle. So before we just had our OKRs on the tribe level and we did it, and we sit together with a tribe or tribe leadership and discussed it. And after a while we said, okay, we need a defined OKR cycle, and then we started also with this retrospectives and the reviews. And I think the reviews, that was a very good point also with the retrospectives that helped us to understand, is there an acceptance? Do we create the right OKRs? Do we define it in the right way or not? Because that's not so easy to define the objectives and the key results in the right wording also. And we learned from month to month or from quarter to quarter and adapted all the time from our learning experience. So it was I think me as a tribe master, I was also responsible for this whole process, and for me it was very it was very exciting because I could create like every week new ideas because I learned so much. But on the other side, you can't change every month or every week the whole process, because you have to take all the colleagues with you together, and that was always a big point and a sticking point, that it was very, very critical to get the acceptance from all the colleagues, because why should they do that? That's always the biggest point. And I can remember that we had last year, we made an internal, or we get an external trainer, and we made internal OKR champ trainings, so that we wanted to expand it a little bit, to have expertise in the company for that, so that we have different guys who can support it, who can moderate it, etc., and challenge the management, for example. And in this training, all the guys were always asking, what is the right definition for an objective or a key result? And I was sitting there and I said, the definition, you can bring it up. It's not necessarily the definition, or it's not the first point, because how can I bring up the acceptance in this with a colleague, so that the colleague said, okay, that's cool, I want to do this OKRs, why should they do that? And for me, was that always the biggest sticking point.
Yeah. I was just going to echo that. I really liked the what you said. You talked about an example of introducing some kind of rhythm or cadence behind this. And I think often what we find is that things might work or not work because of different factors in sort of how we've introduced this idea. And it could be that you're doing your OKR updates too often or too infrequently. You're doing it at the wrong flight level, something like this. And I think all of these kind of concepts are part of the experimentation. So it's really cool to hear those examples of it coming through. It's not like, I think there's a class, I think I've heard you say it a couple of times, like in sort of a training kind of a context, if the way the destination is agile, the path there should be agile as well. And so this kind of adaptation and iteration as we go, rather than just trying to, we're going to use OKRs, we define it all up front and then we just execute it. It's like, no, that's actually contrary to the whole idea behind OKRs. You should iterate both on the objectives, the key results, and on the concept of how you use them, because you have to learn and iterate on your whole process. So super cool to see that happening. Klaus, I want to kick it back to you. I think you had a question that you wanted to pull in.
Well, yes and no. So there are quite a lot of questions in the chat which are somehow dealing around how you set OKRs. I mean, I think we covered some of them. I don't know, maybe we can just do one more question regarding like the specific OKRs. Like Alex Krause, hi Alex, we know him, is asking like, okay, is there an example of the best and the worst OKRs you have created? I guess it's quite hard from the top of your head, but can you remember something where you were like, okay, that was really like a good one, so like a practical good one, or this was one where we're just like not so good?
Well, okay, give me a minute.
It's a tricky one, right?
Well, it's really tricky because we had so many OKRs, or tried to define OKRs and key results, and we were sitting there, and I know that during the last year we were very intensively working on that, and I know that I was like, because I made this bigger pilot with the management also, and I was in this leading this pilot group there, and started to talk with the trainers also, and I was sitting there and always looking then on our tribe OKRs, and I said, okay, I'm not sure, I think that's not an objective. And my colleague said, okay, why? And I said, okay, why? Good idea, or good question. I think because it's not mood space enough, because the OKRs should be more like very inspiring, for example. And sometimes we had like a measurement also in the OKR, in the objectives, and that's not necessary because the measurement will come in the key results, for example. So I can't give you a dedicated example seriously, because I don't have one in my mind now.
Yeah.
But I know that sometimes we said, okay, this is not an objective, this is a key result. Or for example, when we defined the key result, we said, okay, that key result is so defined and deep, that's not a key result. That's, for example, a sub goal that we had there. And
it's almost a task. Just do it.
Just do it. And seriously, the definition, the right definition of an objective and a key result, that will come over years, because in the first steps, it's really not important. It's important that you sit together and you come at a discussion and you say that our goals, and we want to achieve that, and how we will come to that. And sit together, even in the first step, sit together there every second week and make us think to see, okay, that was not the right description. And
I really I really like what you just said. So it's more it's really a matter of time. So I mean, in the Flight Labs universe, we always have to deal with this like from output to outcome. And when we are trying to go from output to outcome, of course, something like OKRs or other goal setting techniques are a perfect way of doing it. And sometimes it feels like people are like, okay, give me the recipe, and then like in 2 sprints or something like this, kind of. We are perfect in setting our goals. But that's totally not what I experience. So especially when it comes to these goal setting techniques, like from a strategic level, we are talking about years. I mean, if you boil it down to quarterly outcomes or something like this, so just the chance to learn is actually quite long. So I think when you're heading down this road, no matter how much training you have, I mean, training just give you more or less the basic vocabulary to do it. But then it's really like practicing. And yeah, as you said, we're more talking about years and not so much about weeks until to get it right.
Yeah. I think to unpack that and just add a little bit of from my experience of this is that I think also the goal here is to be able to achieve, I think, better customer outcomes. And the sort of adherence to the OKR method or learning the words and definitions, as you said, Natalia, is not really the point. We can have perfect OKRs, but if we're not actually building better stuff that people care about, well, what's the point in all of that? And I think I've seen a couple of teams that I've worked with in this space getting very sort of, I mean, regardless of the method, I think it's just kind of human nature. We try to understand the specifics. We put all the constraints super clear as if, we follow the recipe and then we're going to get a magic kind of result. And I think the reality is that it's sort of a tool that can be helpful, and there's a lot of different ways to use it. And so, I like what you say. Experiment, try it, adapt, have the conversations with people. Yeah. There's actually a question in the chat that I wanted to try to slightly reframe because the question from F. Biesdorf, hello again, it's lovely to see you joining us, long-time viewer. The question says, what is the fairy dust that you use to get buy-in from the management to use OKRs, and where did the education fit in? And I want to just kind of add a bit of color to this, because I think part of it is that, I mean, you are part of the management in your role as the tribe master. And so at some level, I kind of assume, well, you were bought into the idea at the beginning. But kind of how I would like to reframe this a bit is, how do you get people in general, rather than just the management? What is your kind of approach? Because I assume that part of this is kind of wrapped up in the piloting and testing idea, but maybe you could talk us a little bit through some of your thinking behind this.
I can give how I did it from my perspective, or from my position there as a tribe master. In our tribe, we did so that we started with the tribe OKRs, and it was a little bit, after a while, we don't like it. Or we didn't like it because it was like top down, and we wanted to define it together with the POs and the Scrum Master and the devs together. So we started to give just a framework for that. And this framework, we defined there together in the whole tribe leadership, the OKRs that are really necessary for us. And we did it not only in our tribe leadership, we did it also with the management from our operational part. That we set together and defined it, and then we gave up this frame to our POs and their teams and the Scrum Master, and said, okay, from now you have time until 4 weeks. Please bring up your ideas, bring up your comments, bring up your numbers, for example, if you need a measurement, for example, for the key results. And then we discuss it in one of our tribe, or in our OKR syncs. We made every second week, we made an OKR sync. Then we used one of the OKR sync to align the new OKRs for the next quarter, for example. And that was also not perfect, but that was not the goal for that. Then we started with this idea, with this new OKRs for this quarter. Then we started and went after 2 weeks in the next OKR sync, and then had a look on that and said, okay, what's the status right now? Had we a new update or not? And after a while, even this chart, if you want, I can show you one chart how we did it, because we had their objective and the key results, and like a status progress and the confidence level, so that the different teams which are working on this key result with their sub-goals. The sub-goals, that's the actions for us. So that was a very, very important connection to the action then, our tribe, to the work, that they could define together this points. And maybe Klaus, I should.
Yeah, sure. Just
Well,
share it, because sharing is caring.
yeah, okay. I will share very short my screen just to show you a picture. So this objectives and the key result, I wrote there anything, so you can skip it. But that was one of our first charts. Right now the charts are a little bit adapted. That was one of our first charts, pretty easy in PowerPoint, that we used every second week in our syncs, and that the teams could use during the time to update the status. Here you can see, for example, objective and one of the key results for that, and all the teams which are working on that. So here it would be an action, the sub goal, and the status for that. And here you can also see that the teams started to define together, all teams together started to define these levels. What does it mean for us partly achieved for this key result, for example? That was very important, because at the beginning we didn't have it. And that was very important for us to get more alignment also in these teams, and to get, how to say it, to create more responsibility for this key result. And then when we went through all this charts, for example, say, okay, we have an update, and then they could explain anything about that, and could say, okay, the confidence level is still on green, or now yellow or red, and why, what is impediment, for example. And if we have KPIs that can connect to that, then we put also those KPIs here. And right now we have here, for example, also in the left corner, we have there like a key result driver, because it's always important that, I don't know, until the next meeting, one of the guys from this key results from the team, for example, is driving and asking for the results and update this chart, for example. That was just an idea from our side to do that.
Cool.
You or me, Cliff?
You can go for it.
Okay, so because Cliff and I, we have a chat here, and we're like, I mean, there are a lot of questions still in the chat, and I think we will come back to some of these questions for sure a little bit later as well. So there's one question from Tim, which is like, okay, how do you visualize the OKRs? I think you've shown a little bit of this right now, but there's also another question which I kind of like from, that's this one, from Alex Krause again. So we were actually talking a lot about OKRs now. So how are these OKRs somehow connected to flight levels? Because in the beginning you were also saying, okay, we're doing flight levels, and then we have this tribe, we have teams, we were talking about flight level 2 and OKRs. So I think there's a lot of words in the room now. So can you somehow connect this? So how does OKRs go together with flight levels?
Yeah. Regarding the topic with the board, we had a board, analog board in our company, but it was for us very, very difficult, because we had just half of our teams were staying in Cologne, the other one in Bonn, the other one in Sofia, and even with a video call, it was not really a cool meeting. And that was very bad because in the next steps we said, okay, we do that without a board, and we had I don't have a picture for that now, but we had just again in PowerPoint presentations we had like our tribe vision, and with this tribe vision we defined afterwards then like the tribe vision, like our strategy, for example, and that was also combined or adapted also to the company OKRs when we had or the company goals, not the OKRs, the company goals that we knew. And then we brought it up in the next chart, for example, and made the objective and the key result for that, and always in front of the key result also like a status update in the progress to see how far we are, for example. And we adapted it always after this OKR sync to see how far we are for the whole key result and how far we are for the whole, but it was like in a circle, how far we are with our objective. And that was also our visualized tool that we presented in our management, for example, when we are talking to them once in a quarter and to present what's going on right now in our tribe. So it was I regretted that we don't have a really board, but we tried it also with Jira boards. And I don't know, Klaus, maybe you can remember, in every flight level coach training, I always ask if somebody have a good idea how we can do that digital, but that was not really a good idea how we can do that, and it will be pretty useful for us or easy to use, because also there not only the OKRs, that's a lot of work on top for all the POs, for example, with the teams with Scrum Master together. And if you say, okay, now you have to do it in an additional tool that's not Jira, because we are working most of that, we're working with Jira, with the tickets. It's not Jira, you have to go in a further tool, then to use that and to adapt there and to update there all your OKRs again. That's or maybe I couldn't brought it up, or I couldn't verkaufen, sell the guys why they should do that and how I could create the acceptance. And therefore, we didn't have a tool for that. We did it in a presentation, and we had it in our OneDrive, and we had on Confluence a page where all of our OKR stuff were on one page. So like a single point of truth, you could go there and you could click there, and that was our point, how we want to visualize it.
Yeah.
How we tried it.
Well, yeah, maybe just to add one thing of this. So when you were doing the flight levels coach, this was still like pre-Corona, and we somehow slipped into Corona. But Corona times, they changed a lot in terms of tools. So what we actually see quite often these days, how people are connecting the OKRs with the flight levels is really like using tools like Miro, for instance, or Concept Board or Mural or something like this. And usually in flight levels land, we don't do OKRs, we do OKRs. So we have an A to it as well. So because most of the time people break it down on a flight level 3 board, like we have our objectives, then we derive our yearly key results out of it. We break it down to quarterly key results, and then we somehow think of the actions like A. So what are the concrete things that we want to do? So we cascade it down like this. That's a common thing that we see, but we need to be very flexible when it comes to the tool set, and this is why something like Concept Board, Miro, Mural and stuff is really like easy. But still, OKRs are also maintained in the dashboard or something like this, what you've just shown, and then there's just a link to the flight levels universe with a board like this. But yeah.
One point to your OKRs. The OKRs very, very important, because not to think only about the OKRs. What I tried to mention before. This A, the action, that's so important. That was one of the most. It was always a question. How can we connect our work, because we are doing product development? That was one of the questions from the developers, for example. we're doing product development, how can we connect our work that we are doing with our tickets and our boards? How can we connect it to the OKRs so that we have a good story in that? And for us, these actions are these sub-goals that I mentioned before in this chart. So it's very, very important that you bring up this connection. If you don't have
so I make a bold claim now. I think a good flight level 2 board, which is something like a tribe board in your universe, that's something like a flight level 2 board. And I think a good flight level 2 board is a flight level 2 board with a combination of a flight level 3 board. So you really have your outcomes that you break them down, then you have the actions, and then you see the flow of the actions. So this is somehow, at least for me, so like the perfect flight level 2 plus 3 combination. But yes, in the end, people need to work, and this is like where the actions are, and we need to align the actions to our outcomes, and that's exactly what we want to achieve when it comes to flight level 3 and also flight level 2 boards.
Yeah.
And this is also the thing, people are often asking like, okay, we are doing OKRs, but flight levels sound somehow sexy, so do we have to stop doing OKRs now? Well, the answer is of course no, right? So it's not like water and fire, it's more like steak and potato, they go very well together. Yeah.
I think one thing else that I would just add on that is that part of the point of the tool that you're using, and for me that's usually some sort of flight level system, is to try to make clear that there are usually more ideas or even objectives, key results or things that we need to do than we have time for. And the point of trying to build something like this visualization is to help people make that decision. So when I need to decide between doing this or this item, I need some information that tells me which one is more important. And simply a list of all 400 things that the company wishes we could do, it unfortunately doesn't answer that. And so, with a flight level system, what we do is something along the lines of ordering those things. You can also see the flow of which ones are closer to done or achieving the most impact. You can see which other teams maybe need some help, and you can factor all of that information into your decision making. And so that's why Klaus says, that's like steak and potatoes. They go quite well together because you've got a well-defined, understood goal, but then you also need to prioritize it relative to all of the options that you have. And today something new comes along, Natalia goes to play golf with the CEO, and the next thing we've got a new piece of something to do. We put this in the mix of all the options we have, and we need to somehow make this decision. Cool. So I'm just conscious of the time, actually, and I know that there are at least two questions that we want to ask you, but I want to do a slight little commercial break, if that's okay, first, and just tell people about the Flight Levels community. So for those of you who are not aware, you can follow that link. It's completely free to sign up, although there are also some paid options for those of you who are excited to join and be part of something much bigger. But sign up on this link. You can ask questions. Natalia is part of this community. Klaus and I are there. Many of the people in the chat are there. There are loads and loads of interesting people you can have a conversation with. So come on, join, ask some of the rest of the questions that maybe we haven't had time to answer yet today, and learn a little bit about flight levels and how to be a better leader using all of these tools. So yeah, give it a look. If it sounds interesting, we'd love to hang out and chat some more. Cool. So a couple of questions before we wrap up. I think perhaps the main one that I wanted to talk about, just kind of quickly scanning my list. You've talked about a number of things that you've used, Natalia. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the positive impacts and sort of the effects that you've seen from doing this. So you talked about visualizing things across your level 2 system. You've talked about the objectives and the key results that are visualized within that system, the level above and the level below. What are some of the impacts that you've seen sort of in retrospect that have been helping the company, and how has this been beneficial?
I think helping the company is the first step, really, that we started to talk to each other and we started to talk to each other about common goals. So,
That's great.
like I mentioned, our first agile transformation, that was really about how we can work better together, and that was more a cultural topic. And from my opinion, is it still not a cultural topic, because the OKR is just a model to visualize like a compass to see the direction, to see in which direction we want to go together. And therefore you can use this model of this OKRs. But if you have a good collaboration, for example, together, and it's everything clear between the departments, then you even don't need these OKRs. Then you just write down, or you sit down together and say, okay, what do we want to achieve in the next quarter? And then you start with that. So I think the OKR is just a good model to help, to write down the common goals and to help the communication in difficult situations, for example, or in situations where the teams are very, very big.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I love that phrasing. Get people talking to each other about the work. Like, that's so important. And amazing how often we're not doing this. We, as you said, you're saying to somebody, but now I have to interpret. I'm not sure exactly what this means. So talking, and I think humans having a conversation.
Exactly. If I just add one thing, what I like was OKRs and other goal setting techniques. So you're not talking about what keeps people busy, but you're talking about outcomes. And I think business outcomes. And this is really like a nice twist in the conversation. So it's not about, yes, I'm done with the project. It's more like, okay, am I heading in the right direction, achieving the goals?
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. I want to take one last opportunity just to remind everybody, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. It would be great if we know which of this content you enjoy the most. It's also very helpful for us in terms of promoting these ideas and trying to make the world somewhat of a better place by sharing smarter ways of working and cool ideas that people like Natalia have been experiencing and using in their organization. So hit the like button and hit the subscribe. Cool. So one last question for you, Natalia, before we wrap up and say goodbye to everybody on the live stream. It's kind of my sort of standard go-to question is that you've been doing this for a little while and you've learned some things along the way. So if you had one thing that you would say, maybe something you wish you knew at the start or something that you know now as a result of being on this journey, kind of like one really important tip or trick or something that, I think you understand the question. What would your one tip or insight be to share with all the wonderful people on the stream?
One tip, and I wish when I would start it again, would be, and that would be a wish in every change that I ever started and did, is to define in the beginning with the management together that we have a transformation team and these guys need time, they need room, and they need the capacity to work on those topics, because everybody is doing that on the top, and that's not possible when you just do it on the top, because you need to work on that together and you need to bring up together your results. And if you just have 1 hour once in a week, then you're just sitting there together and discuss. But when you when you want to work on that, and you need this time, and I would always say define a time box that you need. I did it in this agile transformation to say I need a transformation team like once in a week for a whole day or for a half day, and we work on this in this half day just on our topics and nothing else. And that is very, very, very helpful. And otherwise you don't really will go forward, or you go forward like one step forward and 2 back, and that's frustrating after a while.
Yeah, that's great. I can't disagree with any of that. I would totally +1 it and say spend the time to have those conversations with people. Yeah. Cool.
And maybe one other point.
Sure, go for it.
Forget the terms and start just what we want to achieve. We want to have goals and we want to see how we can measure, or to see when we have achieved them. Forget the goals, forget the terms, just to go with the goals, and that's okay. I did also with our executive management in our interviews. I didn't call it OKRs. It was just what you want to achieve in the next year. That's all.
Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Cool. So we've reached that point in the evening where it's, I guess, time for us to, some of us will go to bed, some of us will go to work, some of us will, like myself, have a beer and chill for a minute. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been on the live stream for the wonderful questions. Thank you for engaging in the chat. It's really great when you see kind of this whole conversation flowing while we're having this conversation. It's one of my favorite things about this medium of interacting with people. In a live environment, it's not possible to have a chat while the people on stage are having a conversation. So some positives that come out of all of these different ways of working. So thank you everybody on the live stream, and thank you once again, Natalia. It's been really great to have you sharing all of your insights and having just a wonderful conversation. It's been super cool. So thank you so much for taking your time to be with us this evening. Cool. Remember, a few weeks from now, we will have another event. So jump on the meetup link that I said before. Stay in tune. We've got a wonderful lineup of the coming weeks, interesting folks we're going to be chatting to. So yeah, thank you once again, everybody. From me, Klaus, anything that you would like to say?
I'm happy. Thanks so much for sharing your insights, Natalia. And thanks for everybody who's on the stream. Cool.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. Good night. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.